Join Uber One now and up to 10% off takeout. Join Uber One now.
Join Uber One. Order minimums apply. Percentage off discounts only available for participating stores. See uber.com/Uber1 for details.
On Friday night, we saw one of the biggest right as people were wrapping up their weeks, the big trading shops, there was a massive coordinated dump. It happened in the nighttime for the United States. So this could have been some Asian hedge funds. I'm not 100% sold on a narrative as to what was behind it. This could also just be the inevitability of liquidity drying up, but it was so coordinated and so brutal. It really felt like a bunch of big players were trying to play into the fact that things that are not Bitcoin and Ethereum are effectively just completely rugging the liquidity. Since then, coins have bounced a little bit, but certainly nothing convincing. So the real question is, what's going to happen next? Well, if we're going to look at Trader XO here, who's called it pretty accurately, effectively what they're looking for is an 85% retrace here. To make it clear what that means, if you're looking back at the 2018 levels, you would see an 85% correction, which would bring us back here to this peak area, which we hit in early 2018. Again, this was part of the Michael Saylor breakout in late 2020. That would be absolutely brutal and would certainly bring in new lows on a lot of different coins. Do I know if we're going to get that? I don't know. But as you know in this channel, I have been very slow to deploy anything more. This was part of the Michael Saylor breakout in late 2020. Effectively, what they're looking for is an 85% next. Well, if we're going to look at Trader XO here, who's called it pretty accurately, effectively what they're looking for is an 85% retrace here. To make it clear what that means, if you're looking back at the 2018 levels, you would see an 85% correction, which would bring us back here to this peak area, which we hit in early 2018. Again, this was part of the Michael Saylor breakout in late 2020. That would be absolutely brutal and would certainly bring in new lows on a lot of different coins. Do I know if we're going to get that? I don't know. But as you know in this channel, I have been very slow to deploy anything more than small percents of my portfolio at any given price target. And that's because in the macro environment, this bear market can take some real nasty twists and turns. In this particular case, we have a regulatory wave as well as a macro wave, and that gives us enough reason to be cautious and to deploy little by little. I know personally, I still have a ton of liquidity ready to buy these dips in the event that we get some new low prices. Again, we can't predict the future, and I don't pretend like I have a crystal ball here. However, I do believe that I will never forgive myself if crypto recovers, has another beautiful cycle like our last one, and I wasn't heavily accumulating here during the cycle low. You're starting to see all kinds of market participants losing their patience, completely calling it quits, leaving the industry, giving up on their bags, capitulating based on emotion, based on price, based on time. All of these things are natural parts of the cycle, and yet we are still in the year before the halving. The halving next year, which should start igniting the passions of the next crypto bull cycle, will be kicking off middle to end of 2024. So for me, until we start seeing the 4-year cycle or the next cycle not materialize on time, if we're in early 2025 and there isn't really any meaningful price movements, until then, I'm going to continue accumulating according to my plan. And having a plan makes it much easier when you get into the thick of it and start seeing some unprecedented, some wild capitulation like we've seen on Friday. Again, I'm here to buy low and sell high. And so as things crash, deploying little bits of my sideline capital each and every time I see blood on the highway, that is my strategy. I hope this video helps you. Again, it was either a hedge fund that blew up or potentially just some whales dumping and pulling their liquidity out from the retail market. Either way, I'm going to stick to my plan, accumulating Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the coins that I believe will live to see another day. As always, if you enjoyed this one, make sure to click this video. It's even better than the one you just watched, and I'll see you very soon on the next episode.
I'm busy.
I'll be quick.
What?
Your friend.
I get very concerned about the government trying to usurp digital currencies because they not only have an interest in being the monopoly player in currency, but also because these central bank digital currencies can become a method of tracking, of finding out what you're doing, where you're spending your money.
Absolutely.
That makes me very nervous, and I see what Gensler doing as a strong step.
Yeah, he's finally started to say the silent part out loud.
If you hold cryptocurrency, this may shock you. This is SEC Chair Gary Gensler before he was chair at a 2018 Bloomberg conference in New York, educating the masses that Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, and Bitcoin Cash are not securities.
Over 70% of the crypto market is Bitcoin, Ether, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash. Why did I name those four? They're not securities.
Why did I name those four? They're not securities. They're not securities.
Wow. Yet in 2023 today,
I'm asking about one.
The public is anticipating a profit based on the...
I'm asking you a specific question, Chair Gensler. I said this in private. This should be no shock to you. I'm asking this question. Is Ether a commodity or a security?
And again, it depends on the facts and the law, and if there's a group of individuals...
I'm asking you about the facts and the law sitting in your seat and the judgment you are making.
And so, Mr. Chair, I think you would not want me to prejudge because I'm also...
But you have prejudged on this. You've taken 50 enforcement actions. We're finding out as we go, as you file suit, as people get Wells notices on what is a security in your view, in your agency's view. I'm asking you a very simple question about the second largest digital asset. What is your view?
And my view is if there's a group of individuals in the middle...
now luckily, as of this week, there's an official movement in Congress to fire Gary Gensler. But today, the latest CPI data just got released. Inflation rose at a 4% annual rate in May, the lowest in 2 years. And even though headline inflation is still at 4%, even though core CPI data is still at 5.3, this is still much, much lower from what we've seen. And as US inflation appears to be slowing, this eases pressure on the Fed meeting tomorrow.
We got a strong core print today.
It was a good report.
This is a step in the right direction.
Overall, inflation continues to come down.
Inflation is coming down.
The Fed has to be pretty happy with these numbers.
And certainly it takes away some of the pressure from the Fed.
That should buy them more time to keep watching the data.
I would vote for wait and watch.
It doesn't look like they're going to need to hike this week.
The skip is priced in. That makes a lot of sense.
Definitely a skip. That's already been communicated.
So now that the latest CPI data was positive, breaking. The Fed rate futures now show a 100% chance of no interest rate hike at tomorrow's Fed meeting. So after 10 consecutive rate hikes in a row, it's now 100% projected that the Fed will pause this month. However, there is still a 65% chance of a 25 basis point interest rate hike in July. And in terms of what the market is projecting, only one interest rate hike cut is currently expected for the entire 2023, meaning markets long term have actually gotten more bearish. Because keep in mind, just 3 weeks ago, futures were showing 3 rate hike cuts in 2023. Furthermore, no more interest rate hikes were expected. And if you're asking why, here is the head of equity strategy at Wells Fargo explaining the current state of the market and interest rates.
You can't say mission accomplished. The Fed still has to do more. And if you look at the Fed, we're looking at a situation where we haven't broken the economy, right? The job market's still incredibly strong. Inflation is stubbornly sticky, and they're talking about a pause. We really do think they need to do more. And more may be holding on, but more may be more interest rate hikes as we go forward in time. Things, if you told me that Fed funds were going to be above 5% and the economy would be doing what it's doing right now, I'm not sure I would have believed you.
And so for the Fed right now, even as much as they are continuing to do their inflation busting,
but really the inflation side, they're talking about 2%. And I think 2% is really aspirational. Can they get it down further? Yeah, I do think they can get it down further. Maybe with time, but really I think they need to do more on the interest rate side. And I'm a little bit surprised that they're pausing at this point in time, because again, if you had the equity market up 10%, the economy where it is, the job market is strong, I wouldn't expect the Fed to be pausing. But you're right. They signal that. I should expect this pause. We should all expect that. And let's just watch the numbers and see what happens.
Yeah, they don't like surprising the market, as we know. I mean, and they're allowing sort of this percolation, right, of the rates to make their way through the markets, I guess.
And with the stock market, the S&P 500 doing very well year to date. What is now the expectation going forward?
How do we predict what happens next?
It's a great question. So let me be incredibly transparent. We're at 4,200, so the market's above where we expected it to be. That was our year-end price target. We're very surprised we got here this quickly. And then when we look at the underlying fundamentals, they really don't justify this kind of sharp move up. A lot of it, as you know, is AI and AI related. A lot of it is positioning. And so as we look forward in time, we think it's a period where you should expect to see some sort of pullback. Nothing goes up in a straight line. And so at this point, a lot of my peers have gone from bearish to bullish. Sentiment has really risen. We're going to start looking at 2Q numbers in the second half, and things aren't great. So sooner or later, we should have some sort of pullback.
Now, if you hold crypto, there is some good news. Binance is officially fighting back, as well as today, the XRP price jumped as the Hinman documents were finally released. For a beginner's guide on what are the Hinman documents, seek out this video. Big week for crypto due to this, but as now explained by the chief legal officer at Ripple, it's been about 5 years since Bill Hinman gave his infamous speech speaking about Ethereum.
On June 14, 2018, then SEC Director of Corporation Finance William Hinman gave a high-profile speech where he declared that a token is not a security when it becomes, quote, sufficiently decentralized.
So what was now uncovered with the release of these additional Hinman documents? And keep in mind, Ripple Labs was always excited about this release, as Ripple claims Hinman's remarks at the time mean XRP should not be considered a security as well. Like Ethereum, XRP should be off the hook. And we now see, with the release of these Hinman documents, we can now all see that Hinman ignored multiple warnings that his speech contained made-up analysis with no basis in law.
But internal emails and documents show that senior SEC officials repeatedly warned Hinman that his speech wasn't true to the law and would greatly confuse the markets even more than they already were. Now, after more than 2 years and 7 court orders, we can finally share some of what we found in the Hinman speech documents. The SEC head of trading and markets warned Hinman that he was making up factors that, quote, go beyond the typical Howey analysis, as in not in the law, and that the speech could lead to not just confusion, but greater confusion on what is a security. Hinman ignored him.
If the network on which the token or coin is to function is sufficiently decentralized, and the purchasers no longer have a reasonable expectation that a person or a group is going to carry out essential managerial or entrepreneurial efforts, those assets might not represent an investment contract.
On June 4th, Hinman wrote that he didn't see a, quote, need to regulate Ether as a security, and set up a call with Ethereum's co-founder, Vitalik Buterin, later that week to, quote, confirm our understanding. On June 11th, the SEC's own general counsel advised against including any direct statement about Ether in the speech, because it would be difficult for the SEC to, quote, take a different position on Ether in the future. The next day, Trading and Markets wrote that the statements about Ether were, quote, likely to create more confusion. But Hinman went ahead with the speech anyway. And the SEC, despite knowing all this, touted the speech repeatedly. The SEC chairman himself pointed market participants to the speech.
Bill Hinman recently outlined the approach we take to evaluate whether a digital asset is a security, and I encourage you to take a look at Bill's speech, which is available on our website.
The SEC knew the speech didn't follow the law. The SEC knew the speech would create greater confusion, and the SEC knew Hinman was making things up. So why is the Hinman speech still on the SEC's website? Why was it ever allowed to be given at all? And why has the SEC pushed a policy of regulation by enforcement, falsely insisting the rules are clear?
An investigation must be conducted to understand what or who influenced Hinman, why conflicts, or at very least appearances of conflicts, were ignored, and why the SEC touted the speech so much, knowing that it would create greater confusion. Be sure to like the video if you got value today. And by the way, use code AltcoinDaily50 and join us in Portugal for the Blockdown Fest.
Why are you not investing in tax liens? No, seriously. Why are you not investing into one of the most...
Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong is in a battle with regulators. The SEC sued his company, saying Coinbase broke the rules by listing tokens that the regulator alleges are subject to securities laws. He sat down with the Journal to discuss the situation. This doesn't seem like one where there's a lot of dispute about the facts. You're trading cryptocurrencies on Coinbase. The question really is, are you breaking the law? And is what you are trading a security? So take us through how you think about this case from a legal standpoint. We're not disputing facts here. We're disputing interpretation of the law. What's your interpretation of the law?
Well, okay, so let's zoom out for a minute. So if we go back to 2021, Coinbase, we wanted to become a public company. We described everything about our business, the assets that we list on our platform, how we do staking. And the SEC at that point allowed us to become a public company. And, fast forward, a year later, we started to hear some conflicting statements from the SEC, the CFTC. Generally, when we hear updated information from regulators, we go in and we talk to them. We say, great, if the rules have changed, how can we adjust? And, an example of that was they said XRP we think might be a security. We said, okay, we want to act in good faith. We'll delist it. We don't know if it's a security or not, and that court case is still playing out. But, we want to be collaborative and work with regulators. And then something shifted about a year ago. A totally different tone started to happen. And we kind of got this information from the SEC that, well, actually, we think everything other than Bitcoin is a security. And we kind of said to ourselves, well, that's not our understanding of the law. How are you coming to this conclusion? And we were sort of met with silence, right? We did a series of meetings with them, probably 30 meetings over the last 12 months, where they asked us every question under the sun. We kind of, told them everything we could about our business. But we didn't really get clarity from them about how we could come in and register, which assets they had a concern with, why there's contradictory statements between them and the CFTC. We didn't really get any feedback from them. And suddenly we got this Wells notice and then the complaint that was filed yesterday. So basically we're in this environment of, regulation by enforcement. I don't feel like there's a clear rule book. The only sort of high-level statements they've made is that everything other than Bitcoin is a security, which that's just not what it says in the law. And by the way, that would also kind of mean like the end of the crypto industry in the US if that was actually what happened. And so we have to go to court to challenge that. We're proud to do it for the industry and for America.
But this has been something that has been hanging over the industry and Coinbase for a while. The SEC is far back as the previous administration, Jay Clayton, had been saying things about, hey, some of these things are securities that are being traded out there. The SEC has written papers about this. You in your S1, when you filed to go public, put down as a risk, the SEC may decide that the stuff that we are trading is in fact a security, and there are onerous and difficult registration obligations that we would have to do should the SEC decide this. So it isn't like this sort of came out of nowhere. This was something that had been over the industry for a while. But you pushed ahead anyway and built a business and grew that business and added more tokens and added more assets. Tell us why you did that.
Yeah, well, there are certainly crypto securities out there. In fact, Coinbase has reviewed, well over 1,000 different assets. 90% of them we've rejected, right? Because we thought some of them could be securities, or we had other concerns about them. So we've really only listed a very conservative, small number of the assets out there. And so I agree with the statement. There's a lot of crypto securities out there. In fact, I would like there to be a robust, healthy market for people to trade crypto securities in the U.S. I think this is one more area where crypto could help update the financial system around capital formation. And we should make it easier for people to raise money for their company or for something they want to build in the world, and those should be issued and registered as crypto securities. We filed a petition formally with the SEC to try to get clarity about how that could happen. We acquired a broker-dealer license, which is dormant because we haven't found a way to activate it with the SEC. So I would like there to be a robust market for trading crypto securities. The 10% or less of assets that we reviewed that we did decide to list, we feel that those are crypto commodities. And so they don't need to be registered and traded with under an SEC license.
Let's back up a little bit for people who are not so in the weeds on all the various minutiae here. The SEC has alleged basically that you are running afoul of the rules in three ways: that you're a broker-dealer, that you are a clearinghouse, and that you are an exchange. All three of those things, the SEC requires that you register and take a bunch of actions. You aren't doing that. there's no dispute that you are not any of those things. Is that right? Or is there any dispute that you are acting as a broker-dealer, acting as a clearinghouse, and acting as an exchange?
No, I mean, well, we don't claim to be a broker-dealer, or we've acquired a broker-dealer license that's still dormant because they won't allow us to activate it. But for the assets that we do trade, those are commodities, so they don't require those registrations.
They don't require the registrations, but we're not disputing what you do. What you do is function as an exchange, function as a clearinghouse, and function as a broker. The dispute is around whether what you are trading, clearing, and broking is indeed something that's under the SEC's jurisdiction, right?
Yeah, we're trading on our exchange crypto commodities today.
So let's zoom way out again for people who might not be deep into the minutia of this. So the question of what is a security, you can think about it in a whole bunch of different ways, and there's case law on this. But like, to zoom way out, you've got like baseball cards at one end, you've got Apple stock on the other end, right? Baseball cards clearly not a security. We trade baseball cards; they have value, but nobody thinks that like a 1987 Topps Darryl Strawberry is a security. Apple stock, clearly a security. Big gap between those things. Bitcoin looks like it's more over here, closer to a baseball card. And the SEC is making arguments that a bunch of things that you trade on Coinbase are more over here, closer to Apple, that they're company-like things. They're companies that work on these protocols that issue these coins. They issue the coins to people who expect that they get a profit from those coins. How do you think about that distinction?
Right. Okay. So I'll just clarify up front here. I'm not a lawyer, right? So I'm going to do my best to get to touch on this.
But you have had a lot of time and have had to do a lot of thinking about this topic.
Sure. This is a deeply technical topic in the law, and I'll tell you my interpretation of it in a second. But it's worth noting that in the United States we have a securities regulator, the SEC. We also have a commodities regulator. And so partly this is a major topic of debate in the U.S. is like, which one is it? But in other countries, like in the UK, for instance, they just have one financial regulator for both. And it's funny, they spend like 1% of their time even discussing this issue as some sort of like kind of wonky, interesting topic. But it's a massive issue in the U.S. just because we have two separate federal regulators, and there's kind of like a turf war, political, power sort of battle happening, which we feel like we're caught in the middle of. So anyway, with that as a backdrop, there is this thing called the Howey test, right? Which is the definition of a security, and it kind of says, is there an investment of money in a common enterprise with an expectation of profit based on the effort of others? So it has those kind of four prongs. You can spend, you can twist yourself into knots, kind of teasing it apart. But the important thing to know is that all four of those things have to be true, right? So you can imagine there are things that, like you mentioned, baseball cards. There's other things that people invest in, even with an expectation of profit, like let's say a Picasso painting, right? That they hope to make money on. They hope it will go up in value, but that's not a security, right? Because it's not based on the efforts of others. And so there's various ways that you could imagine a crypto asset would not be a security, right? If it's sufficiently decentralized, there's no common enterprise, right? If there's some specific utility around it, it's not just for the purpose of the value of going up, right? And so what we need in the United States at this point to get regulatory clarity, unblock this issue, get rid of the turf war, is regulatory clarity. And I think what's going to happen now, since the CFTC and the SEC have not been able to sort of figure this out, is we're going to have Congress step in and draft legislation that will unblock this issue in the United States. Or we're going to have the courts create more case law, which is partly what we can do by going to court with the SEC here, is it's just helping get case law created. I've been really pleasantly surprised to see that there's now draft bills being created in Congress. Congress is very aware this is an issue, by the way. They're worried that the U.S. is going to be left behind because while this kind of back and forth fighting is happening, the UK, Singapore, Hong Kong, like the UAE, every financial hub in the world is kind of saying, hey, we want to be the future crypto Web3 hub, and we have clear rules. Europe just passed comprehensive crypto legislation way ahead of the US. So usually we think of ourselves as kind of innovative leaders around technology in the US. We're taking notes now from Europe because we haven't gotten this figured out. So
I want to come to what the rules should be and what you think they should be and how they should be changed down the road in a second. But I want to stay for a little bit on what the rules are now, which is what we have to deal with. It's what the industry has to deal with. There are rules now. The rules are subject to interpretation. Obviously, you will be. It sounds like you will be taking this to court pretty hard, and there will be a trial and a discussion and litigation about what the rules are. I assume that's where you're going with this.
Mm-hmm.
So under those rules, I'm going to pick out a couple of things that the SEC has said. The SEC has said that there are 13 tokens that are cryptocurrencies, crypto assets, or whatever you want to call them, that you are trading. They say actually at least 13, but they name 13 that they say are securities, and they provide some detail for them. And in a couple of those cases, from reading the SEC's complaint, it looks a lot like a company selling stock. So they bring up the example of Solana, where there was a fundraising. They sold these tokens. Investors bought the tokens. They told the investors, we're going to use the money that you give us to grow and develop the platform. We're going to hire engineers. We're going to build stuff. And in return, we're going to reduce the supply of tokens so that the tokens that you hold become more valuable. That sounds a lot like a company selling stock. How is that not, in your view?
Right. So you're right. The SEC complaint sort of said, of the over 200 assets on our platform, we have a concern about these 13. So it was a relatively small percentage. But to answer your question directly, so again, if any of those 4 prongs of the Howey test are invalidated, it may not be a security, right? And again, this is something the courts would have to kind of really dig into. But an example would be, in the Solana case, right? Let's say that if something has sufficiently been decentralized, that could be an argument, right?
But there are founders of Solana. There's a Solana Labs. There's a Solana entity.
Sure. There was a founder of Bitcoin too, right?
Maybe. We don't know.
And Ethereum, right? So this is actually an interesting sort of nuanced point. Some things could be a commodity from day one. Other types of crypto assets, they may start as a security because they're just raising money for a project that could be something in the future. But then as that project launches and it decentralizes and it develops utility, it may actually convert to being a commodity at some point, right? This is actually an important part of the law that's unclear right now. And for instance, the draft bill that we saw come out of Congress last week from McHenry and Thompson, they start to try to address this issue of how and when would an asset that started as a security become a commodity, right? So anyway, there's a lot of details where in a moment in time you have to look at it. It could be different a year later. Anyway, with every asset we've listed on our platform, we did extensive diligence. We did I think it was like a 72-point legal analysis. We rejected 90% of the assets. Every asset we decided to list, we felt there was a strong argument that it was a commodity, and that's what we're going to go to court to win on.
So you looked at thousands or 1,000 tokens. You listed 250-ish of them, and the SEC has a problem with 13, at least 13, but they highlight 13. So. Mm-hmm. But the issue is you have to bat 1,000, right? You can't have any securities. You've got to have all 250 that you trade can't be securities. Otherwise, you're running an unlicensed securities exchange and an unlicensed clearinghouse and an unlicensed broker. So it seems like the odds are kind of not in your favor.
So that's not really how I think of it. Remember, the goal of this lawsuit is to get clarity for the industry, right? And we've actually been formally petitioning the SEC for clarity.
Well, the SEC's goal is to stop you from breaking the law. In their view, it's not. I don't think they think that there's a lack of clarity in the industry. I think they think that you're breaking the law.
Well, that may be what they say, but I can assure you, there's a huge lack of clarity. I mean, every startup in the crypto space is spending huge amounts of money on legal, lawyers who basically tell them, I don't know, there's no case law. We can't really give you a clear answer, right? And the SEC has really failed to kind of publish a clear set of guidance. You may have seen in front of Congress, Patrick McHenry asked the chair just a very simple question on one asset. Is Ethereum a security or a commodity? And over again, he refused to answer. I mean, so even on some of the biggest assets, they can't just give you a clear answer. But yeah, going back to the prior point I was going to make. So, our goal with this court case is to begin to get clarity for the industry, not just for us, but for the whole industry, honestly for America, so that it doesn't fall behind in this area. And so if we get any kind of clarity from the court, regardless of the outcome, honestly, I think it would be a step in the right direction. But we feel strongly all of the ones that we listed there, since we took a pretty conservative approach, they are commodities.
Now, in the process of assessing which assets should be listed, that was something that your company spent a bunch of time on. You participated in some of these discussions. To describe the process, how does that work?
So actually, there's a committee, a digital asset listing group, that decides this. I'm actually not on that committee.
And you don't participate in those discussions?
I helped design and give input on the process and how it was designed originally with lawyers, but I'm not actually one of the decision makers on the listing process intentionally. And so the thing that committee does, every asset that we review, we look at a number of factors. So one of them is this legal analysis about, is it a commodity or a security? And we've developed our own internal framework for that. We've shared that with the SEC. We shared it with them before we went public. You know, they've been well aware of it for many years. We also look at the cybersecurity kind of the credibility of the token. Some of these smart contracts could have issues that might harm customers, and so we do a cybersecurity analysis. We also do a compliance review of the asset and the founding team. So based on that, the committee, which has a diverse set of skills of different people in finance and cyber and legal and all kinds of things, they make the listing decisions.
The SEC says in its complaint that you rushed that process, that Coinbase Coinbase actually started fairly conservatively with Bitcoin and with a much smaller set of tokens, while everybody else in the space was going wild, listing a zillion things and trading derivatives and all kinds of crazy stuff. And you were pretty conservative, but over time you listed more and more and more, and possibly let the standards and let the analysis slip. How do you respond to that?
Well, we've rejected over 90% of the assets we've reviewed, so I think that's a good start. And then I feel pretty comfortable about the analysis. I think as the SEC goes in to look at it, really as the court goes in to look at it, because the SEC has already seen all of this, I think they'll find it to be a very rigorous analysis. We have, basically a stack of paper on every single asset we've ever decided to list. And the irony of this is that we were continuously asking them during this period, can you give us more clarity? That's how it's supposed to work. Like, the regulator publishes the rules, and then everybody has to follow them, right? So you have to remember that there were no rules. We couldn't really get any feedback from them about, was this asset okay, or was that not? Why, right? And so with them sort of abdicating that responsibility, we essentially had to create our own process, and I think we did a really good job of that, working with some of the best legal minds in the world. And so I think it's pretty unfair, and I think this is not a good fact pattern for them that a jury or a judge would look at, is to say, look, this company was formally petitioning you for clarity. They met with you 30 times. They developed their own internal framework, working with the best lawyers in the world, and you never gave them any feedback on it. And then you hit them with this enforcement action. That's not fair, and that's not good for America.
Coinbase has a venture arm that invests in tokens and other things. Does it invest in anything that's traded on the platform?
I don't know actually the exact. I want to make sure I give you a specific answer, but I think most of those have been just standard venture investments in startups.
So that's not a factor in the listing decisions, is whether Coinbase has or doesn't have a position in the company or the token.
Well, we don't take any listing fees. And as far as I know, on the digital asset listing group, they don't look at our personal Coinbase venture investment. It's not a factor.
You talked about the rules and the clarity and what the rules should be. What's wrong with the Howey test? It's been around for, since 1946. It covers a whole lot of things. It started with orange groves, but it covers stocks and all kinds of stuff, and has been deployed in a bunch of different places. And the original kind of idea of it was for it to be flexible. It was not supposed to be, we're going to make a determination about this specific thing. It was supposed to be flexible because the court knew that securities and trading would evolve over time. What's wrong with it? How does it fail to count for the specific needs of crypto?
Yeah, so I think it's a great starting place, and we basically need case law to sort of help us understand some of the nuances of how this applies in a crypto environment. So an example is that in crypto, for many of these assets, there is no common enterprise or central authority that would be responsible, say, for issuing disclosures or something like that. Like the Ethereum network, there's not any one group that controls it. It's decentralized, right? And so we actually, we put out this petition to the SEC. People can Google it if they want. I think it's Coinbase petition to the SEC. You can kind of read it. And we actually, a lot of these are really technical legal questions, but there's about 40 different areas where we felt like the current law was a little unclear on this, like, decentralization, utility. What does that mean in context of open source software, right? Who would issue the disclosures if there's not a common enterprise, right? So there's a lot of open questions like that, which we don't feel have been answered, and that's the kind of clarity that would be helpful.
Do you think that there is a role for those disclosures, for that kind of information to investors? Because right now there isn't, right? There isn't any disclosure about any of these tokens besides white papers and other stuff.
Yeah.
Certainly not standardized disclosure. Do you think there should be some disclosure, leaving aside who does it or how it happens?
Yeah, so for crypto securities, absolutely, there should be the normal set of disclosures. Even for some of these things which may be classified as commodities, I think disclosures could be an important part of that. And actually, one of the nice things about crypto is that you can actually go look at a lot of this data on chain. It's public. There's a couple companies that are trying to find ways to sort of better aggregate it and sort of say, okay, here's the distribution of all the people who own it. How long have they owned it? What price did they buy it at? Are they insiders or are they, just third parties? And trying to get better insights. So anyway, I think that kind of thing is really important. And again, it needs to be updated for this new technology, which is a little different than what's come before.
It sounds like what we're talking about here, though, is a question of degree, right? So there are some, back to the sort of baseball card and Apple thing, there's a big hazy middle there, and the SEC would like to put the line here, and you'd like to put the line somewhere to the right of where the SEC wants to put the line. But fundamentally, you're still thinking about the distinction between commodities, which are okay to trade in the way that you trade them, and securities, which shouldn't be. It's just a question of where the line should be. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is what the courts and Congress need to figure out, is where should that line be? And honestly, reasonable people could disagree. There's probably somewhere there, And ultimately, our goal is we're already licensed by the CFTC, and we have the dormant license from the SEC. We would like to be in a world where we're just licensed and regulated by both, and it's a healthy market structure, and maybe some of these assets would start as a security and they'd migrate. The McHenry-Thompson bill that kind of came out last week contemplates this idea of, maybe we could actually have one exchange where both commodities and securities and stable coins, and by the way, there's other things in crypto too, artwork and identity and all kinds of things. So these could all kind of coexist on a regulated platform. And so if you do have a new technology that comes along, it doesn't quite look like A or B, it's some kind of hybrid, that's probably why we need new legislation.
So if the line gets drawn here, and my hand is meant to be in between Bitcoin and Ether over here and everything else over here.
Yeah.
If Bitcoin and Ether are the only commodities, is Coinbase a viable business? Can you just say, you know what, forget about all the rest of it, we're just going to trade Bitcoin and Ether, that's the business?
Well, first of all, I think that would be a pretty extreme position, and that's not what the rest of the world, including Europe and the UK and Singapore and Hong Kong, have done. So let's put that aside for a minute. I don't think that's what the law says either. But so Bitcoin and Ethereum are the majority of our revenue today in the trading world, right? Now, we also make quite a bit of revenue. Almost 50% of our revenue is from non-trading fees, right? And then we also have revenue outside of the United States, right? So I guess even in that scenario, yes, we're a viable business and there's lots of things, but I also think that's just not what's going to happen, because that's not where Congress is headed. That's not what the courts will decide.
You are unusual among other crypto exchanges in that 84% of your revenue is in the United States, and most of the rest of them either are not in the United States or say they are not in the United States. Is there some universe in which Coinbase also, and Bittrex did this, when they were sued by the SEC, said, you know what, we're going to give up the U.S. and go to the rest of the world. Is there some universe in which Coinbase gives up on the U.S.?
That's great stuff.
need more time.
Light, cleanse these faithful servants of their sin. Bring them peace in death.
Damn.
Well, you made it here in one piece. Lilith and that beast tore right through us. Could have killed me too. But she left me untouched. She's toying with me. Wants me to watch her destroy everything I've built. Damn it! Did you see Yorin the way you came?
No.
She hasn't won yet. There's still a chance to stop her. But I can't do it alone.
I'm with you. Where is she now?
An old chamber beneath the keep. That's where Astaroth is. I didn't vanquish him like the stories say. I imprisoned him in a soul stone.
Shit.
It was a last resort. I built Eldheim over the stone to contain its evil. I've spent my life watching over it, keeping it a secret, so Astaroth would never hurt anyone again. Not even my son knows. I'm sorry for hiding this from you before, but I couldn't risk a stranger finding out the truth. We should get moving. Follow me. If you didn't see Yorin outside, we'll search on the way.
Attack?
Not in town. When was the last time you saw Yorin?
We were discussing what happened to Erida, and then Lilith stormed the keep. I ordered some guards to escort him out of Eldheim. I should have stayed with him. One of Yorin's protectors. This night, he was with Yorin.
Shit.
The last of my son's guardians. Come, quickly. Yorin's mace is here. I told them to get out.
Maybe he and the Knights tried to stop Lilith. Could she have taken him somewhere?
What possible reason would she have? He means nothing to her. We need to move. The way to Astaroth is through here. I've been asking myself that same question. I'm as much in the dark about it as you are. They share a connection, though, and a strong one at that. Astaroth is a guardian of Lilith's father, Mephisto, the Lord of Nature.
Where you going, dude?
Here it is. The Soul Stone Chamber. Lilith has what she wanted all this time. She took the stone. No sign of Yorin, though. We need to find him.
Mighty Astaroth, the charred Duke himself, confined to a cage. What a pity.
Daughter of hatred.
I have an offer. You will grant me safe passage to a place I am no longer welcome. In exchange, I will give you freedom and more. Donan's progeny, his pride and joy, your retribution, if you give me what I want.
You will have safe passage.
Was it another vision? Did you see Yorin?
Yes. Lilith stabbed him with the Soul Stone.
My son?
I'm sorry, Donan.
This isn't over.
I know what
No! There's still time. You have to trust me. Meet me in the Great Hall. Even after I watered the stone with Nafane and Erida, the demon's power gradually seeped out. So, I turned to the cathedral. Eldheim itself is a giant capstone, blessed with Inarius' light. It subdued the evil below. None of that matters now. Traitors. They did this to me. To my boy. I must find Yorin as quickly as possible. I realize how hopeless this all seems, but I've spent half my life studying the Soul Stone. I know its nature. It will take time for Astaroth to overpower my boy. I taught him well. Even now, he's resisting the demon's influence. They'll be close by. Karagar, perhaps. All those innocents to burn will excite Astaroth, make him fight harder to take control.
Lilith has what she wanted from Astaroth. Why would she linger here?
I don't know.
It was a beast. A hound of hell.
Not in town.
Kaina, get up! We have to go now! I can't leave without you!
They're here. Yoren can resist. He's strong.
Sure.
You're in! You're in!
He has been waiting for you.
Where is he?
Come forth.
My boy.
He called out for you, wept until his tears became fire.
Do as you please, Astaroth. I have what I came for.
Ah!
I'm sorry, my son. I'm sorry.
Donan, I will leave you in peace.
After I loot. Intelligence, man, come on now. I don't think I've ever been this area.
Aye. A shame about Yoren. Was one of us, you know. We'll take care of him and his father.
Lilith and Astaroth had made a deal, and we were the ones who would pay the cost. Our presence was no coincidence. Everything happened exactly as Lilith wanted. We just danced to her music. Donan was shattered. His mind on grief, not her. Not answers. No one knew what Lilith was truly after, or exactly what Astaroth had promised her. But we needed to recover quickly, and we needed to stop chasing her phantoms.
Can't do that here.
This is already here.
I got day old bread, and these thumb rocks I found. My best sellers were my carved charger tusks. If you carve the right pattern, I'm all out of tusks though. And money.
I can't interact with anything.
A little lady just wandered in, covered in soot, and made herself a home. Seems to like Glenbeer well enough.
Not in town.
in town.
So with Vex here.
Torn throat. Too clean for a beast.
It's the bear of Blackweald. Returned from the days of ash to tore out their throats, he did. Women.
There is no bear. Something has eyes for our merchants. Others have yet to... Not normal to miss their midway point. A fabled killer from the days of ash. A tale shared... The time of Astaroth's reign in Skosglen. Countless suffered. The heroes saw an end to it. It's not to be made little of.
can always use a strong back. But truthfully, I've been hoping to visit my sister and her newborn up in Braestig. But the roads are lot of folks round here would feel better with someone like you keeping those.
I saw what you and Donan did for us, what he had to do to his son. It is a cruel fate for an old warrior to see his legacy perish. He did not deserve it.
She was raised here by Vasily himself.
No, I'm not all right. Just look at the color of her bark. The poor tree. My, she needs a piece of her mother. The great oak of Turdulra. Not to go deep for it, though. I'd search that darkness myself.
I need more time.
Mark of a mercenary company from the days of Ash. Killed man or beast without hesitation. Black-wheeled company. The company that put the fabled bear to purpose. The last time they visited the Highlands, Brionne burned. Ruthless mercenaries from the days of Ash took any contract that promised equal weight of blood and coin. Only the desperate called them. But those were desperate times.
Smoke's billowing from the southern ridge. The fires have returned.
No time wasted. Can you see to the source of the smoke? There's likely a connection in all this. I'll see no harm reaches the goose. It was consumed by fire in the months that followed Astaroth's defeat. Some thought the demon had returned. Others were wiser. Black-wheeled company visited the town the day it burned. The charred remains proved their hand in the deed. Strong souls who had survived so much, all extinguished by day's rise.
I'm paying attention.
Buried traps and a lookout who doesn't mind his back. Predictable and disappointing.
The bear has finally left its den.
You never should have returned here. I'll never forget the smell of the bodies. Formerly, Donan sought able bodies and conscripted our lot to defeat Astaroth. Our ruthless tactics were put to measure, and, with time, the demon was defeated. But the things I saw humbled and horrified every part of me. My kin and our leader, Stana, did not share my shame. They delighted in the fires, yearned for their return. I was there when they set upon Breon. saw the madness in their eyes. The days of Ash had taken their minds. So I cut them down, one by one, and left them to be claimed by fire. After years of quiet, it seems something survived that night. These bodies and the merchants were meant for me. Meet me at the Goose. We'll see the Black Wheel together.
Yo. I'm completely gassed now. I have no more energy.
Alright, I'm gonna call it quits tonight. Thank you guys for tuning in.